Hello everyone, Jeff and Jay here with another edition of Jay's Big Adventure. Jay's the fuzzy one. And today we are going to talk about insurance for the cars and the motorcycles that you're trying to flip. In most states, both from a licensing standpoint as for being a dealer, car dealer, motorcycle dealer, and insurance, as long as you're not selling more than one car a month, 12 cars a year, you can continue to do it as an individual. If you go above one car a month on average, typically they'll classify you as a dealer, and then you have to have a whole bunch of additional requirements. You have to have a lot, you have to have a building, you've got to have licensing, you've got to have all kinds of additional expenses that may not make sense if you're really only doing this one car a month. And that's 12 cars for the year. If you do 5 cars in 1 month, that's not a problem. You just can't go over 12. Check with your local state because they do vary a little bit state to state. But let's say you're doing this as an enthusiast, as an individual, and I buy a car or motorcycle, and then I'm going to resell it. What do you do in the meantime for coverage? Okay, again, every state is different. In Indiana, where I am from, I could legally take any plate and registration off of any car, slap it on anything else, and as long as I had the registration and the plate and a purchase order or a purchase agreement or a title showing that I did indeed own the new car, my current coverage on my other vehicles would cover me. So as long as I had full coverage insurance on anything that I owned, I could take that plate off and then use it for 30 days completely legally. My insurance with State Farm was the same way. I had 30 days to notify them that I had purchased a vehicle. And technically, you're supposed to let them know as soon as you purchase a vehicle anyway. Legally, you've got 30 days. A lot of it depends on, is this a car you think you're going to have for a long time? And is it a car that you think you're going to drive? And I've had some pretty rare pieces, and I wasn't planning on driving them just around. It was going to sit in the garage and not move. The only time it was going to get driven was for test drives. Hopefully, the first guy that test drives it was going to buy it. So for those cars, I really wasn't worried about day-to-day coverage. Other cars we used. I bought pickup trucks, I bought Jeeps, I had other vehicles that I was planning on using while it was in my possession. So for that car or motorcycle, I would let my insurance company know, I would start a policy on it, and I would keep that policy running for several months. I now have 2 cars being insured. I now have 2 plates that I can choose from when I go to buy something else. I can do the same thing with a motorcycle. Especially as a additional vehicle, the cost of insurance is typically not as much as it is if you would insure them individually. So sometimes I would get, especially on a motorcycle, I buy something cheap, I may let that insurance run for 6 months even though I sold the bike in 2, just because I had a plate with a current registration and current insurance. I could go anywhere at any time, jump on a bike, and legally ride that motorcycle home with no question that I was covered. Here in Utah, you cannot do that, okay? If I buy something here, I cannot take a plate from another vehicle and just slap it on my new purchase and ride it home. If I would get stopped and the cop wanted to be difficult, they legally could tow the motorcycle and impound it. And now you have a problem, because you can't take the bike to the license branch to get it registered because I don't own the bike, and I can't get the bike out of impound without the proper paperwork. Yeah, you can see how that can get really tricky, especially if the purchase was made out of state. If it's here in Utah, it's not as big a deal. I can go down to the license branch and deal with it. But here, I'm in Salt Lake City. If I go to Idaho, which is an hour away to buy a bike, and I ride it home and I get stopped, I have to have a police inspection done on the motorcycle before I can get a Utah title. I can't get the bike to the license branch to get the inspection done because it's in the impound lot, and you can see how this can get really, really tricky. This is all just for minor inconveniences. If you have a major problem, if you have an accident, if you hurt yourself or somebody else, this is now a big deal. Okay, and let me explain how this went down with me just last year. I was working at a small dealership. We bought a little Nissan Frontier. It came in on trade. 04 supercharged 5-speed manual. I've talked about this in a couple of my other videos. Had 79,000 miles on it. The supercharger didn't work. There were some other issues, and so I bought it right. I paid $3,500 for the truck, gave the dealership $250 over for their profit, and the truck at $3,750, and it books for 10 grand. It was the lowest mileage one for sale in the US with a manual transmission, and I knew it. So I had put it out for over $11,000. The truck just never ran right. The supercharger bearings were out of it. I replaced those. That didn't help. It ran fine until it got warm, and then the supercharger would quit making boost. It was a very odd problem, and I did all kinds of stuff. Spent a ton of time working on this darn thing, trying to get it to run right so that I could resell it. And it was February, I think. It was snowing. I went out for a drive just around the neighborhood, and 6 houses from home, the truck burst into flames and burned to the ground. Now, I'm 6 houses away from the house, so I called Laura and said, "You're gonna be hearing some sirens come down the street." She knows I'm out test driving this vehicle. Don't panic, I'm fine. The truck, however, is on fire. So she and our daughter stuck her head out the window, saw the flames, and literally walked down the street. And we sat on the curb and watched the truck burn. And eventually the fire department came out, put it out, and it got dragged off to the tow truck's lot for me to deal with. And that truck was legally insured. I had started a policy on it. It was full coverage. It was legal. It was plated. And that saved me from losing the money I had on that truck. If you're driving a vehicle that's not registered and not plated, you can get fined. The vehicle can be impounded. There's a bunch of stuff that can go wrong from a legal standpoint. And if I would have had an accident and hurt someone, that insurance then could have been really important. The insurance company, of course, wanted to know what I paid for the truck, and then they wanted to give me that. That is not what I wanted to get out of the insurance company because this truck was so rare. We went back and forth over the course of over a month, and I ended up getting over $10,000 for that truck that I paid $3,500 for. That's because it was properly registered, properly insured, and there was no question on the legality of what was going on. If I had not properly plated the truck, I'm sure the insurance company could have argued that it shouldn't have been on the road and it shouldn't have been driven. You never want lawyers involved, okay? Especially high-powered lawyers that are being paid for by your insurance company. They have way more money than I have. So really pay attention. If you are buying and selling a motorcycle or a sports car where some doofus may want to test ride it and then crash it and hurt themselves, it's really important that that bike has good insurance. Insurance, by and large, is pretty cheap, especially on the older stuff, which is what I typically deal with. Don't get caught with your pants down. Don't let somebody wreck a bike without having it properly insured. It can come down on you. If he runs somebody over and kills them and your bike's not insured, you don't want the insurance company coming back to you and saying, "Hey, you have more money than this guy had. You're now going to pay the claim from the guy that got hurt because you didn't have your ducks in a row." So don't do it. Look into different companies. Look into your state to find out what the laws actually are. Do you have a grace period? And how long is that? Now the question is, can you flip that car or motorcycle in that time frame? If you're in a state like Indiana where you've got 30 days, hey, that's 100% legal. I'll float for 30 days, see if I can turn it quickly and not have to have that one count towards me on my insurance. It's going to count with the state, but the insurance won't have to be changed into that particular vehicle's VIN and insurance rate. The other thing that you can do is, if you have something old and crappy like an old Civic, that's going to be way less expensive to insure than a used Corvette, right? If you can buy that Corvette, flip it inside of 30 days, if you're in a state where that's legal, hey, that's just using the system. But you definitely don't want to get into a situation where you get caught by the short hairs and then have to write off the cost of the vehicle because the insurance company is not going to compensate you for it, or worse yet, have to deal with having someone get hurt in the process. So check your state, check your insurance company, keep the car legally registered, keep the bike legally registered, and stay tuned for another episode. We'll be filming another one soon. Jay says thank you.